Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're going on a deeply fascinating and honestly pretty chilling journey. Picture this. You're sitting around a crackling campfire, the woods are pitch black, and you're swapping those spooky fictional tales that just make the hair on your arms stand up. You know the kind. Well, we're going to start with those whispered stories, move right into the local folklore that really shapes our communities, and then we're crashing headfirst into a horrifying true crime reality. So let's get into it. What happens when the boogeyman is real? Seriously, think about it. It's a question that's haunted our childhoods for generations, and it's exactly what we're unpacking today. We're going to explore that deeply unsettling gray area where fiction bleeds right into reality, where the monster hiding out in the woods isn't just a shadow, but actual flesh and bone. Part 1. Who is at the door? The primal fear of the unknown visitor. Okay, think about that creeping feeling you get when you're home alone at night, the house is completely dead quiet, and suddenly, boom, you hear a sound right outside your front door. If you dive into the tropes that absolutely dominate modern internet horror, stories like Don't Answer the Knock or The Midnight Knock, you'll notice a super distinct pattern of unbreakable rules. Stuff like, 3 slow knocks at exactly 3:13 a.m., or the strict warning to literally never open the door at 11:59 p.m. You've got shadows moving in empty rooms, some sort of entity outside that slowly learns your actual name, or even accidentally releasing a demon just by knocking 13 times. These stories, they tap directly into our most primal, hardwired fear of the monster in the dark. We just love the thrill of an imagined threat waiting on the other side of a thin piece of wood. Section 2. Creating Monsters and Myths. The rich folklore of upstate New York. But hey, let's step away from internet fiction for a second, because long before we had online forums to share spooky stories, communities were busy building their own incredibly detailed, wild legends. And this brilliantly illustrates just how much variety there is in upstate New York alone. I mean, you've got cryptozoology covered with Champ, the legendary lake monster that supposedly patrols the dark waters of Lake Champlain. Then you've got spiritualism, tracing right back to Hydesville in Wayne County, where the Fox sisters did the very first table-wrapping seances, basically birthing the whole American spiritualist movement. And, oh man, the hoaxes. Take the Cardiff Giant in Onondaga County. This was a fake, petrified man that became so famous and made so much money that the legendary P.T. Barnum actually tried to buy it. When he was told no, he literally just made his own fake copy of the fake giant to take on tour. It's wild, but it just goes to show how deeply ingrained myth-making is in regional culture. And honestly, you can't talk about New York folklore without looking at its 19th century roots. The foundational American folklore was practically invented right here by Washington Irving. He wrote Sleepy Hollow and Rip Van Winkle and set them right in the misty Catskills and the Hudson Valley. These legends provided a shared cultural identity, like a playful, spooky story to tell in the dark just to keep that fun campfire tone alive. Section 3. When legends become real, the sinister shift in Staten Island. So what happens when that playful campfire tone dies out? The vibe changes completely here, because we're leaving the realm of harmless hoaxes and fictional headless horsemen. Listen to this. Cropsey, a boogeyman-like figure from New York City urban legend, historically used to scare children into behaving. For decades, parents and camp counselors out on Staten Island would warn kids, don't wander off, or Cropsey's gonna get you. But here is the terrifying twist that changes everything. The filmmakers behind the 2009 documentary Cropsey, Joshua Zeman and Barbara Brancaccio, discovered this myth wasn't actually a myth at all. It was based on a real person. The real-world setting for this monster wasn't some magical, enchanted forest. It was the dark, imposing reality of the Willowbrook State School and the surrounding campsites on Staten Island. The monster in the woods wasn't a ghost with a hook for a hand. It was a very real man named Andre Rand. He was a former employee of Willowbrook who occasionally lived in these makeshift campsites right near the facility. The local myth actually had a physical address. Section 4. The Truth Behind Cropsey, Investigating Andre Rand. Now, what's really interesting about this is how the filmmakers embarked on a rigorous journalistic investigation to peel back the layers of local rumor and find the devastating truth underneath. Throughout the 1970s and 80s, Staten Island suffered a very real, very human tragedy. Children were disappearing. In 1979, a young girl named Holly Ann Hughes vanished. Then, in 1987, Jennifer Schweiger was kidnapped, a horrific crime that Rand was ultimately convicted of, receiving a 25-year sentence. Decades later, fast forward to 2004, Rand was brought to trial again, this time facing charges for that 1979 disappearance of Holly Ann Hughes. This isn't just a timeline of events. It's a grim, devastating reality that completely shattered families and turned a community's swirling urban legend into an absolute nightmare. To untangle this nightmare, the documentary team pulled together extensive archival news footage and conducted these highly emotional, truly heartbreaking interviews with the families of the missing children. It was a profoundly complex true crime investigation that really required looking at multiple perspectives. On one hand, you had police investigators who strongly suspected Rand might have had unknown accomplices. But on the other, you had Rand's defense attorneys firmly disputing the accuracy of the allegations against him. The filmmakers even reached out to Rand himself at Rikers Island, and after exchanging some letters, he actually agreed to an interview. But in a truly chilling twist, by the time the film crew finally arrived at the prison gates with all their cameras ready to go, he had completely changed his mind and refused to speak to them. That's how many years the 2004 trial for Holly Ann Hughes took to even begin after the initial indictment. 4 years. That marked one of the longest pretrial motions in the entire history of New York State. It just goes to show the immense legal gravity and sheer complexity surrounding a case that locals had treated as just a terrifying campfire tale for so long. Section 5. Why we tell scary stories. The psychological need for the boogeyman. So this brings us to our final synthesis, and honestly, the most important question of all. Why do we even tell these scary stories? To answer that, let's look at the critical consensus of the film to see society's role in creating these legends in the first place. The legendary film critic Roger Ebert gave the documentary 3 out of 4 stars. He noted, "Cropsy is a creepy documentary with all the elements of a horror film about a demented serial killer and an extra ingredient. This one is real." So the crucial point is how perfectly the documentary managed to merge the chilling aesthetics of a horror movie with the rigorous, factual grounding of true crime journalism. Jeanette Katsoulis over at the New York Times completely reinforced this critical acclaim too, calling the film disturbing and flavorful. And that really highlights the immense success of the film's narrative structure. Exploring a whole community through these intertwined lenses of true crime and local folklore is incredibly impactful, because ultimately the documentary serves as a mirror for the town's collective trauma. It isn't just investigating a crime, it's investigating the very soul of a community that's trying to cope with the unthinkable. At its absolute core, this story is, as Noel Murray from the AV Club put it, a meditation on how we use stories to explain the inconceivable. When an entire community is faced with something as horrific and unexplainable as children disappearing, the trauma is it's simply too much to bear. If no clear, logical story is handy to explain a tragedy like that, what do? We take the clues we have, the dark woods, the abandoned, imposing institution, the drifter living out in the camps, and we literally invent a monster. The boogeyman becomes a psychological necessity. It gives a face and a name to the random, chaotic evil of the world. It helps us process the heartbreaking reality that sometimes terrible things just happen to innocent people. We use fiction to mask the real horrors we just can't quite process. So I want to leave you with this final, kind of provocative thought. What is the urban legend in your hometown hiding? Think about it. The next time you hear a local ghost story or a warning about some monster in the woods, maybe look a little closer. Because as we've learned today, sometimes the scariest stories out there aren't fiction at all. Thanks so much for joining me on this explainer, and remember, keep questioning the stories you hear.